14-year-old, I signed the schoolboy. I was literally always tied to Middlesbrough really from a young age. I generally learnt more in my later career, I think, than my first, 10 years. He actually said to me once, you need to get, not out to Middlesbrough, but you need to play a higher level now. Players are playing Champions League, you have to be competing with them.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Daily Coaching. So Daily Coaching are currently hosting a number of episodes where we're talking with ex and current professionals of the game. And I'm absolutely delighted today to announce that we have a legend of the game joining us, Stewart Downing. Stuart's played for various different clubs across Middlesbrough, Aston Villa, Liverpool, West Ham, and also represented England at the national level as well. So first of all, big, massive thank you for Stewart for joining us. And Stewart, if you can, just to start us off, how did you get into football when you first started out at a young age? What was the sort of journey that you took into the game?
Obviously, just kicking around from an early age with my dad. He was big into football. I was one of 5 kids, the only son, so maybe he tried to push me that way from an early age. Obviously, my sisters were all into dancing and stuff, so he maybe thought I need a wingman here, I think, to try and get into football. So I was literally into like a boys' club. It was Martin FC in Middlesbrough from the age of, I think I was around about 6. And it just went from there, really. Played there for a couple of years up until 9, 10, and then I got invited to train with Middlesbrough, which I trained 2 or 3 times a week. It was actually at the old Errikson Park ground, if you can remember that, before they moved to the Riverside. And it was just there, just a gradual progression from there, really. Obviously into school football, your county, but I was always training with Middlesbrough. I went to like other clubs and trained, except like Man United had a centre of excellence in Sunderland at the time. Yeah. So I went there for a couple of times, and I travelled to different clubs on weekends to play for them. But I think in my mind I was always settled at Middlesbrough, and from 14-year-old I signed the schoolboy. Yeah, so I was literally always tied to Middlesbrough really from a young age.
Nice. And because you, like you said, it was obviously the local area and obviously the grassroots side that you joined was in Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
I mean, a bit of a cliche question, because I know in this day and age, so many people support a range of different teams, some not even in England. But was that kind of always a bit of an aspiration to kind of think, well, do you know what, I'm from Middlesbrough and could I potentially ever play for this club?
Yeah. I think I was always obviously a Middlesbrough fan. My dad was growing up. He had a bit of an attachment with Liverpool, because I think growing up in that era, they were obviously the dominant team. He was a big fan of Liverpool. He still is, really. But obviously, because from Middlesbrough, we supported them. But I quite had an affinity with Tottenham for some reason. I don't know why. I was at school. I've got pictures of when I've had the yellow Holston kit on, the white one. I had the vet goalkeeper, if you remember, in the goalkeeper shirt. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. It must have been, I'm thinking, Gazza's era around about there, that I just had a bit of a attachment to them. But I honestly don't know why. But I must have just liked the kits and stuff like that. But I think obviously the big thing was I was always a Middlesbrough fan, because it was literally on my doorstep.
Nice. It's like you said, I think it's interesting about the kit stuff as well, because I think there is a whole range of different reasons. Some people support teams based on their family, some on location. Yeah. Like you said, some based on kits or, certain players as well. I think that's another big thing as well. Sometimes people are fans of players rather than teams. And say, for example, if that player moves, they almost join affiliation with that as well and go along with the times. I was like that. I was obviously a fan of Ryan Giggs growing up. So obviously I'd watch United, but I wasn't a United fan. I just watched him. And then, like I said, I like the Spurs because probably the kit. It's got to be because of the kit. I can't think of any other reason. And then Middlesbrough because of, obviously, it was my local team, and that's who I went to watch with my dad. So, I think I was just probably supporting who I was good at the time, I think. That makes sense. It's a good way to go as well, especially, like you said, if they continue to do well as well. So you mentioned, obviously, like you said, you started off at a grassroots team, and you kind of just briefly mentioned there about when you used to grow up, you used to kind of watch Ryan Giggs and obviously, replicates of the positions that you played throughout your career. When you played at your grassroots team, what was the kind of coaching like that you received? I mean, I know grassroots teams, nowadays, obviously, coach education is a big thing. And a lot of coaches, even at grassroots sides, even if they're volunteers, have done their badges and are educated within sort of coaching. But what was it like then? And was you kind of always determined, look, do you know what, this is the position I want to play? Or was your coaches ever kind of like, you want to play here and then we'll try you out here? What was the sort of experience?
I think as a young, I was like a centre forward, left wing. I think when you're younger, you tend to, follow it. Like, I want to be a forward. I want to score some goals on you. You never hear anyone say, I want to be a defender. It's always the attacking, wasn't it? Or a goalkeeper. But I was always like a centre forward, left winger type of player, and my coach was a left-footed player back in his time. So I think he had he actually said like affinity with me. So he tried to, and he said he could only ever use his left foot. So in terms of coaching, looking back now, he was actually good for me because he used to do stuff like in the session, he'd say, you can only use your right foot for the next 10 minutes. And I'd be like, I'm like 8, 9-year-old, like, why? I'm left footed. And he was like, no, you can only, it's like, but if I look back in terms of how I watch coaches now, they do stuff that now in the first team level. They'll say like they'll put restrictions on them, 2-touch, or you can only use your right foot, or go and play right wing, but you're a left winger.
Yeah.
Just to get them used to, obviously working on the weaknesses. But he was doing that with me from 8, 9-year-olds. So at the time, I didn't think. I just think, well, he probably doesn't like me. He just wants me to fail because I've got no right foot. But I gradually got better with my right foot. So, like I said, when I look back now, that was actually good coaching from him. To make me better on my right foot. Because I'll be honest, I wouldn't have used it if he never told me to, put that restriction on my right foot. I would never have used it. I would have just kept playing left. But I think as you get older, you need to have more like strings to your bow, and because people are working out how you're playing stuff. So that was good coaching for me, really.
Yeah, nice. I think it's interesting as well, like you said, about the sort of like little challenges that people put in, or coaches put in for those areas. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, let's be honest, we all join kind of grassroots teams ideally. Sometimes obviously parents have other views and they're like, well, this is the start of an epic journey that could happen. But as a kid, you want to join it because you want to play football. And that's, you think, wow, I get to play in a team. I get to almost replicate what I'm seeing on TV. But you kind of just want to play. Now, I think it's quite a shock to kids when they start being taught, different ways of doing things. And, like you said, why do I have to do it in this way? Kids obviously are quite inquisitive about things. And to find out that you have to do these early changes almost. But I think the benefit of that is I've always kind of said to coaches that, you might have a player who is about, say, 11, 12 years old, and it's no disrespect to the coaches, but they're almost more educated than the coaches because they've been through, number one, so many different coaches and so many different experiences. But also, like you kind of said, especially nowadays as well, kids are given so many challenges and problems to solve within games, within training, that you're automatically having to become decision makers. Whereas perhaps, say, for example, if he didn't say to you, you have to use your right foot, you would have predominantly been left footed and you may have not been as comfortable on, cutting in or receiving on your right foot. So I think it's quite interesting and important as well that, children and young players are, challenged in an appropriate way and at the appropriate times. But to have those sort of challenges, because I suppose, like you said, otherwise, as soon as you progress through the game, it's going to be quite a challenge to actually adapt to given scenarios and given situations almost.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely different. I mean, I'm trying to think back of when I was youth team, like, on restrictions, was I set any and stuff like that. Like you say, I remember Dave Parney was a coach, and he said to me, you play right wing, cutting inside and left. And I was like, I've never played there. Like, I'm a left winger. I just hug the touchline and get at people. And he was like, stuff like that, like getting in the pocket and turning, and you start learning all these things. But at the time, I was thinking, why are we doing this? Like, well, I'm just a left wing with feet, and I'll run with it. And he's like, well, you won't get the ball every time to your feet. It's like people, like I said, will work you out. And we were set challenges in that way, I think, which made me, obviously looking back, a better player, because I'd predominantly played a lot of my football as a right winger, left-footed right winger, Aston Villa and West Ham, and I moved in the middle a little bit. But at the time, like I said, 17, 18-year-old, I was thinking, why am I playing right wing? Does he not like me? Does he just, I don't know, is he favouring the other left-sided player? All these things go through your mind, but at the time, obviously, it's good coaching, and it's probably getting more strings to your bow. And whereas I think the first team environment, you'll be challenged in different ways. Winger striker will be, can you get me 10 goals? Can you get me 15? Can you get me 10 assists? All different stuff like that. And obviously the defenders will be clean sheets and etc. like that. So I think you're challenged in different ways, in different levels. I think coming through the ranks, I think they'll challenge you in ways of, because the managers now like players to be adaptable to 2 or 3 positions. You'll see players play, like I say, I'm thinking of Leeds here, because I know a couple of lads who play for them, and they say the manager's big on, if you can't play 2 or 3 positions in a split second when they want to change, you won't play. Yeah. Which is crazy, really. You might have a really good player, but you can only play one position. He might think, well, he's not for me. So I think it is good that you can learn different positions growing up. learn different ways of playing, and starting from a younger level, like you said, they're getting challenged now. I've been doing some coaching with the youth team, and the coach is always setting them challenges, always be that goals, or like from an early age, whereas I was getting that late on, really. So I think they generally get challenged more now, I think, as a younger player, but I think it's good for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting as well, because I think sort of the technical challenges have kind of almost always been there slightly. So like you said, can you play it on the right foot? Can you make X amount of passes before you score a goal? But I think what we're starting to, and then I think it almost went on to, as you went into the older age groups or academies or first teams, you kind of got more tactical challenges. So, can you combine with maybe X amount of people? Can you maybe hit the ball long so that we can break on the wings or something like that? But I think what kind of becoming a bit more appropriate now, and which is good as well, because again, you're getting more and more experience of it. But even at those academy levels and sort of like late youth development, you're still getting set these sort of individual challenges of, can you take a player on? Can you beat him in a 1v1? Can you potentially use both feet? Can you use different parts of the feet? And like you said, I think it's good because it obviously helps you to adapt later on. But when you was in sort of those academy settings originally, what was the kind of, obviously you kind of briefly mentioned there, like, it was a bit more sort of, you was given a bit more less technical coaching in terms of use your right foot. But because obviously clubs have obviously philosophies and, styles of play, which they want to implement throughout all the different age groups, which makes sense. But was there any sort of mixture between that and also, let's work to Stewart's strengths, what you have, and let's work to XYZ players' strengths and what we have? Or was it always just, look, we've got you into the club now and we want to try and mould you into what a Middlesbrough player might look like?
Yeah, I think when I was coming through my youth, especially, I think the general systems, like I didn't hear philosophies and all these systems. It was just generally 4-5-1, 4-4-2. And I was still like a bit like an old school left winger. So it was like, get the ball out to him and basically try and do your stuff. And it was like, as I got older, like I remember I was at Liverpool at 27, 28, and Brendan Rodgers came in and all this 4-3-3 was starting to come in, like wingers on the inside. I knew nothing about that really, because at Middlesbrough I was an out-and-out winger, like I said. I went to Aston Villa. I was literally like an out-and-out winger. We played 4-4-2 generally. Two out-and-out wingers, Ashley Young one side, me. We could switch, but it was hug the touchline, get your man. And Brendan Rodgers started to teach me stuff like coming in off the pocket, getting in on the back of midfielders. And I was like, I'm 27-year-old. No one's ever like really taught me this. Yeah. Which is like crazy, really. You think I've been in the Premier League for nearly 10 years and I still didn't know these ways of playing. I'd always watched teams in like Barcelona, but I thought, well, this doesn't happen in the Premier League. We played 4-4-2 and I started to learn more. And then I actually thought this actually suits my game more to play on the inside, because I was generally, I think deep down, I was always going to end up as a midfield player. I was quick but not lightning quick. I could run, but I think as I got older, I think I say technically was probably my strong point. So I thought I'd end up as a midfield player. And then when I started to learn all this, like I said, coming out the inside, when to go, the time of runs, I genuinely felt comfortable, and I thought, well, how's no one ever like really taught me this? But I think until, like you say, the foreign coaches, but Brendan was instilled in that foreign way. He'd learned a lot of Spanish teams, and he said Ajax and the way they played, and it was an eye opener really for me. And it was crazy because I got to 27, like I say, 28 at Liverpool, where you think, oh, they should know everything by now because at that age, but I didn't. I was still learning, like basically on the job, and it was unbelievable. Really, to be fair, the year I had with him, I learned a lot in terms of coaching, how to play, systems, timing and stuff, and it was a good education, to be honest. But it actually helped my game, and I thought, I wish I knew this 10 years before, but obviously the game wasn't like that then, I didn't think.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because there's a few things. Like, number one, I mean, obviously, I think it's good that you're able to experience different coaches. I mean, I've talked to some players and, they're with a club throughout their whole career. And, if you look even, say, for example, in the Man United era with Sir Alex Ferguson, I mean, although he had different assistant coaches, and, a lot of the time people would say on the grapevine that, it would be those assistant coaches who would come in with the new ideas, new philosophies and, certain ways of thinking to help, obviously, the ideas that he already had. But I think what's quite interesting is obviously when you go into a first team environment that, a manager could be there for 6 years, 6 months, 6 weeks. And, automatically, all of a sudden, unless you're a team potentially like Southampton or Swansea, where they have their sort of, again, I use the word philosophies lightly, but their ways of playing, it's going to automatically change because all of a sudden this new manager comes in and they want it to change in a new way. And I think it's interesting because obviously you said there that like you was able to adapt to Brendan Rodgers, and that's what I think building relationships is so important as players and coaches, because coaches need to understand how can I get the best out of you based on my previous knowledge, experiences, and understanding of the game and that player. But also you mentioned earlier on about the sort of being versatile. How easy was it to kind of adapt to certain managers? Because you mentioned about being versatile, and there's a big debate sometimes within coaching. Obviously at a young age, it's important to make players versatile, but at what age do you kind of make them become a specialist within an area? So, what was that kind of adaptation like?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I was just thinking I'll be a left winger till I'm 35, 36, and then that'll be me done. My legs will fall off. And then, like you say, you learn different coaching, different management. And I think a confidence from a coach could probably help, because I remember, like I said, I was at Liverpool, and the way Brendan played, he said to me, you could play left back in this modern game. And I was like, well, I think he's got the wrong player here. And I was like, are you sure? And I had to be convinced, really, in the way that his coaching, that, as I said, obviously, I'm not really a strong tackler. I'm not a header, so not that type of player. Yeah. He said, no, well, you won't have to do that in the way we play. And it's more like I said, a confidence from a coach. He was saying we'll have the ball, obviously serving from playing high positions. I mean, if you watch, I say Liverpool now, Andy Robinson, he's like a left winger, really, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I was generally, that's what he wanted. And then, like I say, after a couple of games I played, I thought, actually, this is all right. I'm actually getting more possession playing here than I did the left wing.
Yeah.
And I generally grew into that role. But I think it's more, he could see probably my qualities and how I'd fit into his way. But if he'd have just flung me in at left back and not really said anything, it'd have been an eye-up for me, because I would have probably been playing deep, out of position, not really in the right. But I worked at it, and he got me, playing in training and how to do it and stuff like that. And it was good. And then on the other hand, I had Big Sam at West Ham. When I went to speak to him, he said to me, you can play in the middle. You'll be a midfield player. He basically convinced me that I'll end up playing there.
Yeah.
When the time's right, you will go into the middle. But obviously, at the minute, I need you as a winger. I see you can play at the top of a diamond as a number 10, which I did on occasions at Middlesbrough, but I was more of a midfielder, not a 10. And then when we set up with the 10 and two strikers in front of me, he learned me how to play and what to do off the ball and on the ball. And I season and a bit, I think, playing in that position. I absolutely loved it. It's probably one of the best, in terms of getting on the ball and creating stuff that I had in terms of output, assist sort of thing, and goals. I was getting in areas that I wasn't getting into before, and I really enjoyed it. So, like I said, it's probably the manager, I think. Well, for me personally, I think it was more the confidence from them to believe that I could play in their positions, because like I said, I was just thinking I'm an out-and-out winger, and that is it. I generally learned more in my later career, I think, than my first, say, 10 years before I went to Liverpool. So before that, like I said, I was a winger, and that was it, and there was nothing else.
Well, and would you say that is because then, because I was going to say, sort of like, how and who kind of got the best out of you as a player, but would you say it's kind of, like you said, happened sort of later within your career, maybe because I don't know really, I was going to say the education of coaching has become more apparent, but I suppose it was around then, maybe just at the higher levels rather than sort of, the grassroots and academy levels. But would you say also because it's maybe people's confidence of trying out new things and
maybe
ways to play?
Yeah, and I think maybe years ago, I always thought like the manager, I always felt like they were under pressure. If they didn't win 3 or 4, they're out, and then they go back to type, and they might try something, and then it might not work. And I think, back to type 4-5-1, let's get a result. But I think generally these managers, I think they're more confident, the coaches, especially the ones I work with. They all now want to play in a certain way, whereas before it was one way, really. And one might defend like low block sort of thing, as I say now. Now it's all like playing out from the back and expansive. But I play for managers who do not believe in that. Not that it's wrong, but they say no messing about at the back. Let's get it forward and let's play in their half, and all different ways of playing. But it's it's definitely changed. And I think now, like I say, they're getting philosophies. They might get 3 or 4 years to turn that team into how they want to be. I mean, you look at Klopp.
Yeah.
And he took him 3, maybe 4 seasons to get how he wanted that. And look at that team now. It's
unbelievable. They
feel like they're 2-0 up before they've kicked off. They're that good and powerful. It is. I think they have a belief of where they think we're going to win. They've got that mentality, and that takes time.
Yeah.
To build that team. So I think it's definitely changed, and I think the coaches are definitely more. It's probably a bad word, is advanced, but I think they're more. Obviously wanting to play different styles of playing, probably more the Spanish way, isn't it, than the old English way. And I think it's good for the game. It's better for the players, like our English players. They're learning more about the game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as well, it's a big thing down to, you mentioned confidence earlier on, of obviously coaches talk to the players and building confidence, but I think it's also as well self-confidence. And I speak to a lot of coaches and they have brilliant ideas, and I feel sometimes they kind of shy away from trying out those ideas because they kind of feel, like you just said, wow, I'm going to be under pressure here, and if it doesn't work, then it's all the ceiling's going to collapse down on me because everyone's going to be like, well, you tried to do this formation and it didn't work, so you need to do something else. But like you said, I think things sometimes take a little bit of time to adapt and get used to. And not only from a coach or manager's point of view, but also more importantly, to adapt that onto the players. I mean, there's been many stories in the past where managers have come into clubs, said to a group of players, right, we're playing this way. And the players are turning around going, well, we've never played that way. Why are we playing that way now? And I think sometimes it is that belief of, this is what could happen and this is how it's going to happen, almost, that people buy into it to a certain extent.
That's right, yeah.
But I was going to say as well, you mentioned about sort of like, you obviously let predominantly down the wing, and then obviously Brendan Rodgers potentially said, look, you could potentially play further back. Was it ever sort of advised for you to do it from a manager's perspective, or just through yourself, that when you played in sort of like a wing position or attacking wing position, that you would ever sort of try to analyze the defender's game a little bit? Because I've spoken to players in the past where there's a young kid who went from Tottenham and he just moved over to America recently, and he's now working obviously under Henry, and he is a defender, and he said to me that was one of the main reasons why he went there, not just because of obviously Henry, but the fact that Henry was a striker, and that he thought that he can gain so much information and knowledge from a striker about his own game, to understand, type of movements you'll make, things that attackers look out for defenders. Did that ever kind of happen within your game, that you sort of try to look for these little things and adapt to maybe within your own game?
Yeah, I certainly looked at defenders. I think I was a confidence player. I think looking over my career, I was definitely a confidence player. And I generally think when I was very confident playing well, I generally didn't really think, oh, well, I'm playing against him today. Oh, God, I was thinking, no, I'll get the better of him. I just had a mentality of it didn't really matter. But I think when you're not confident, then you start thinking, well, he's good at that, and you might overthink it.
Yeah.
So, but like I said, we get obviously like dossiers on players, like the good and the strengths and the weaknesses, and how we can, like you say, they do it as a team, how we can exploit them. But I generally used to look at 1v1. Even if I didn't get anything from the club, I'd always, like I said, for years and years, I had Gary Neville. I knew his strengths, his weaknesses, which weren't very many, but I knew I was in for a tough game, and you have to find different ways of trying to get the better of him, sort of thing. And but yeah, it's. I mean, I'll tell you what. I remember we played Seville in the UEFA Cup final for Middlesbrough, and Danny Alves was a right back at the time, and he wasn't really that big at the time. He was coming through. I think he was just got to Seville not long, and I got a dossier thing on him to basically say he couldn't defend, not really the quickest, quick but not really the quickest. Literally, whoever wrote this had watched a different player because he was quick. He could defend. He was literally played as a right wing. He was up and down, basically what you've seen at Barcelona. And I come off, and that was a tough game, and it was a bit of an eye opener for me because I thought, that's the level there. He's a proper player, and you see him because he went to Barcelona, didn't he, like a year later. And I remember, I think I said to Steve McCann after the game, like, whoever's done this, this whoever's watched him in this game he must have had a one-off bad game, because I said that is a total different player I played against. And when he was, for his age, he was only young, but he was quite advanced. He knew positionings and how to stop me and stuff like that. And that was a real eye opener for me, really. And I generally watched. That's when I started to watch fullbacks, probably on my own, more than what the people were telling me.
Yeah, it's interesting as well, because again, like you mentioned again with the Brendan Rodgers situation, well, if players are adapting positions based on what their managers are putting out, I mean, yes, a scout or an opposition analyst could go down to a match, watch them. Oh, right, Seville are playing against Valencia, and this is how he's playing. Like you said, they can't defend. But hold on, that might be because there was a really good winger for Valencia. It might have been because potentially Valencia were, you know, either top or near the top or near the bottom, and they were setting out in a certain way. So I think, like you said, I think it's key to get that balance, because you mentioned there, and I agree, I think a lot of footballers do this, and this is almost worse sometimes, the overthinking process. So you've got the ball, right, now what to do? Hold on, what did I remember about this player when he's turning or positioning himself to the right? What do I remember when he's positioned to the left? And I think that, you almost kind of get less confident because you get muddled up with all the different thoughts and processes which are going through your head.
I generally thought that in my later career, it's all in your head. Like I said, if I was confident and playing well, and I didn't even really think about what I was playing against, I just think I'm going to get the ball and I'll go past him, and it's just like your mind's thinking, I'm a good player, sort of thing. It just like lets you, and then when you might have an iffy game and that didn't come off, and you're thinking, I'm up against him today. I don't know why it is. You might just get that little bit of doubt and a little bit of, that didn't come off last time, I won't try that. And whereas I think if you're not an arrogance, I think if you look at the top players, they have an arrogance about them, a good one, not cocky, but you know, you look at Messi, he might lose the ball 2 or 3 times, but then he'll dribble past the next one and hit the winner. No one talks about it. I think that mentality of, I don't care, I'm going to do it. They have a, you know, the big players can just keep doing it. And I think that's the big thing. It's in your head. You've got to, and I got better at that as I got older. I think, and more like, you know, I'd try things, and when I was younger, I didn't really do that good last time. I'll just keep it there. And whereas I think you've got to get rid of that. And I try and do that if I'm coaching with young lads or speaking to them. I try and think, you know, don't be afraid to try things. You know, if I was a manager and you tried something that I thought was in the right areas and you lost, you won't hear any criticism from me. It's obviously the right place to do it. But, you know, try things. Why not do that trick? And if you shoot and it goes wide, we'll work on your shooting and get better the next one. And I think that's coaching's gone that way a little bit. I think it's getting better, like you say, with players, with losing confidence and stuff like that. I think that's a big thing. It was for me, confidence, and I got better at that as I got older.
Yeah, I think as well, like you mentioned, a lot of coaches maybe not know as much now, although there is still quite a big element of it. But everything to do with coaching seems to be perceived as technical. And I agree that I think psychological is so important. I mean, physical, yes, it's important, but I think everyone knows that, you know, or especially nowadays as well, where, you know, almost you can be a footballer, but you can't necessarily be an athlete. That's a harder route to take, but you can be an athlete and become a footballer because you're just learning the technical aspects. But I agree that I think the psychological aspects and the social aspects are so important to the development. And that's throughout any stage of your career, really, because, you know, you go into a new team, how do you adapt to the players that you're working with? You know, say, for example, you know, if a manager comes in and says, right, we've got this really big striker, you're playing out on the wing, you know, all of a sudden you can't put in low balls because they're more comfortable with their head than they are with their feet and things like that. So I think that, those psychological aspects and those social aspects are so important within a game. But what was it kind of like when you played for England? Also, I know obviously you went through different age groups at England as well. But with that, it's obviously so different because, you know, they're picking you based on obviously your performances of how you're doing and, you know, how you're fitting with the team and the squad. But how easy is it to adapt? Because obviously, I mean, now England have got this DNA, but before when they didn't, and it was again very based on whichever manager's there. How did you manage to adapt your game to what that manager wanted for, really and truthfully, 2 games in a row, and then you go back to your normal club football?
Yeah, it was difficult. I think when I first got into the squad, it was under Sven, and it, you know, a really good team. I think you remember that the so-called golden generation. I mean, to get in the squad was half an achievement, not even to play. It was that strong. And generally, you knew what Sven wanted. You generally knew what the team was going to be. It rarely changed, if I'm honest. And that's why I think a lot of players under him, you know, probably did, I wouldn't say enjoy going, but they knew that the team was going to be, they might not get on. And I think a few people retired in there because, I could name the team now on top of my head. It was like Neville, Ferdinand, Terry, Ashley Cole, you know, Beckham, Gerrard, Lampard, Joe Cole, Rooney, you know, and it was like bang, that was the team. He'd changed James and Robinson a few times, but I always have it in my head. I could just name the team off. It was crazy, but and you generally knew what he wanted. Sven, he was a nice man. He just, you know, he liked good football and stuff like that, but obviously he had really good players, and that helped. But then, like you said, if it's different system, different ways of playing, we went Steve McLaren and Capello, and then I might change teams, different thing, and it got a bit. But a lot of people criticised Capello when he came, but I liked it because he picked you on performance, not basically like who you were, what club you were at. Yes, he wanted you to play at the highest level. He actually said to me once, you know, need to get not out to Middlesbrough, but you need to play at a higher level now because players are playing Champions League. You have to be competing with them. And I like that because you give everyone a chance. Whereas I think, like I said, one was, before that bit with Sven, it was you generally knew what the team was going to be and what the tactics were, if you know what I mean. But I think maybe it's different now. I don't know what Gareth's like with systems. I mean, they tend to change a lot, don't they, and different players and different ways of playing, which is good. But I think to implement that in a 10-day block is quite difficult. And he did well, didn't he, in the last tournament? But that takes time. It takes time, and then you never know with injuries, like you say, club football, and that's going to change all the time. So it must be quite difficult for him. To try and nail something to play a certain way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it's tough because you almost, like I said, you pick players, and especially nowadays as well, the England teams picking players based on, their performances, which is brilliant. But, if you have, certain characteristics or certain abilities and real key indicators within certain players, again, it kind of goes back to that Sven era where a lot of people said, well, he's picking the best players at the time, which is good because, you potentially have good players playing, but the whole thing of can they play together? And then, like you said, if you're only with each other for about 10 days, then it's going to be tough to implement that, which, obviously everyone gives their all for their country, but when they know that in a couple of days' time, they're going back to their club environment. And like you said, it might be actually, I've got a Champions League semi-final, I've got a Europa League final to play in, and the mindset kind of tough to adapt and change between that, I suppose.
Yeah, and different ways of playing. Like you said, you could be at your club level and you might be playing a high, expansive pressing all this game, and you might go to England, it might be 4-4-2 behind the ball or quite a lot, and it's like, wow, it's getting used to that again. And I mean, I look at England sometimes and I think, like, straight away I'm thinking, Trent Alexander, he's got to play maybe every game for England. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And he plays in that Liverpool way and he fits that system, but then he might not play as much for England because it might not suit the way Gareth plays that way. And he might find that difficult, thinking, well, I'm winning Champions Leagues and I'm playing at the top level as a 20 or whatever he is, 21, 22. How can I not play for England? Yeah. But it's like you said, it's a different way of playing. He might not suit, what Gareth wants. And that can be difficult as well because, and you're obviously keeping him motivated because, like you say, he might think, not in an arrogant way, but how can I not get a game if I'm doing this in my club level? I should be playing, and that's also a battle as well, keeping players on side in that way.
Yeah, because I suppose they're thinking, well, what else can I do? Like you said, I'm winning things, I'm playing. Like you said, the Capello situation where you said, look, try and go and play for a team which is competing at top levels. Well, some of these players are now, and it must be quite tough to think, there's literally nothing else I can do. And also as well, and it's no discredit to, past generations of teams, but I think you're just seeing so many places for competition in each position now as well. Before, potentially you'd have about maybe, say, 40 players within the country where you go, do you know what? These are the players that are going to get into the squad each time. And maybe, like I said, a few changes here and there. But now, I mean, you're almost getting like 40 positions just in right back, then another 40 centre back, and it's crazy. It's good, but it's such
even the expectation. I remember, like, looking back, Gareth was my club manager at the time. I was in when I first got in the squad, and I just said, going back, I can't understand it. I was at Middlesbrough, not a fashionable club, but not where the media spotlight was on us every week. I could go and play, decent games. If I had an iffy game, it might get away with it and then be good at maybe the next week. At England, it was like, I think I actually did all right in that game. And it was like, people were going, I got 4 in the papers. And I never really generally read papers when I got, because it was, I just thought it was rubbish anyway. Yeah. It's just someone's opinion really in it. But but the media, like the next minute, like you'd be going back to Middlesbrough to play a home, like away game, say, in London, and you'd be getting booed because of your performance because you played for England 3 days before. And it's like crazy. Like I was thinking, like, why am I getting booed? Like, I'm playing for Middlesbrough, you're not really bothered about Middlesbrough, but they're thinking, no, because your England performance on like the Wednesday night. Yeah. And I just thought the media, like the spotlight, and I think that can affect players as well. But and I generally, like I said, I got better as I got older because I realised what it was about. It was a bit of a circus, and as long as you're getting picked in the squad and the players appreciating you, I think that's the main thing, not what everyone else around, because that's just someone's opinion. But I think that can affect players as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, do you know what, this whole, well, obviously then it was like, they said that newspapers and things like that, like articles. Now the whole social media world, it's crazy. I mean, I even talk to a lot of coaches, and there's a big problem even within the coaching industry that, you know, someone might put an opinion out on say, for example, like a Twitter, and they go, you know, I tried this out with my team. Straight away they're getting comments coming back, why did you do that? That's not good. That's poor. Like that would never work with my players. And you know, you think, well, then you're knocking people down for trying things. Likewise with players as well. I mean, you know. Are playing to their managers, not necessarily advice, but you know, the way that people are setting them out. And you know, like you just said, you know whether you've had a good game. You don't need somebody else to tell you or give you a rating out of 10 to say this is where you was. You know what I mean? You're the person who's been in these different environments, these different experiences. And I think with things like that, and this happens a lot of the time, you know, how can these people give sort of reviews on yourself? They obviously can give an opinion, and like you say, it's just it's not a fact. But when they haven't been in that sort of position themselves, you know, being in the World Cup, being in, you know, a UEFA Cup final, how can they give an opinion on your performance when, you know, all sorts of environmental factors which are going on around you to base that opinion on almost?
I was a bit like that when I was younger. I used to not get, like, obviously the papers were always around in the training ground, and I remember at Middlesbrough, and it was like, I got 5 and I got 4, and he said I didn't give the goal away in the paper. And I used to, like, in the first couple of months, I used to get annoyed when I was first getting in the team, and it was like, oh, what the same. And then when I got, like, maybe when I went to Villa and moved away and stuff like that, and you started to grow up a bit, I just thought, why was I wasting my time reading that? And I see lads now, like, you win, you come in the change room, and like the manager speaks, and then you look around, and 10 minutes later they're all on the phones. And I know what they're doing on Twitter or fans forums. And I used to, like, say, there was like a couple of lads at Middlesbrough, I won't tell you the names because I don't want them prime, but I used to say to them on the bus, like, what are you reading there? Like, oh, fans forum. I said, and they're scrolling under the comments, and I'm like, you're reading all them comments, but you keep reading a bad comment, and that's the one that's going to stick in your mind, not the 290 ones that were good. I said, you don't read that. I said, if you play next week in the team, you did all right. I said, because the manager thinks you did all right and you're playing. That's the main thing, and your lads around you appreciate it. I said, these could be like kids. You don't even know who you're speaking to, and you're getting annoyed by someone's comment. And like, it's with the big thing we were on about, they wanted, like, the mental health and all the stuff like that, the reading and all it, it's not good for them, I don't think. Should just put it to the side and just concentrate on the football. Like you say, if the manager's picking you, I think that is enough to say, well, he appreciates me, and that's the biggest compliment you can get, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said about that building relationships element. I mean, you know, you're building relationships with your teammates and your manager, not, you know, by fans, I don't mean own club fans, but fans of, like, you know, just football in general. And true, like you said, you don't know who's on the other end of that phone or tweet or even article. And I agree with you in that sense. And I think it's a tough thing because, like you said, obviously mental health in football is such a big factor now. And one of the tough things is, I think it's just the mentality of a lot of people that we often tend to reflect on the one negative rather than the 99 positives. And it's just because, you know, why did that negative happen? And what can I do better to stop that from happening and get 100 positives? And it's like you said, if things are then thrown sort of in your face through social media or through papers, it makes it 10 times worse, because then that number one negative becomes even bigger and almost turns into 99 negatives rather than one. So
it's crazy, isn't it? It's crazy.
It's quite a tough thing. But I mean, you have had a lot of success within your career. Like you said, obviously in terms of number of career appearances, you know, number of goals, obviously clubs you played for, obviously playing nationally as well, and obviously quite a few finals as well. What would you kind of say has been some of the most memorable experiences within your career? And that obviously could be potentially when you're first starting out as well. I mean, you know, some people say just getting to play football was a big experience.
I think generally I've been very lucky at the clubs I've played for. I think I'd have to say that, you know, really good clubs. I think the managers I played for, you know, in that sense, you know, 9 times out of 10 I really got on with them. I think that obviously that's a big help, going to a club where you can feel part of the team, and the manager's got confidence in you and stuff like that. Because, you know, if you leave and you go somewhere and then straight away you think, oh no, this is, I said, and then your mind's playing with you, it's not working. And I had a look at that in Middlesbrough when I went back, and it was, you know, for 3 or 4 years, I look back at myself, you know, on pictures and the way I was right at home, and I just wasn't right. Like, I was miserable, really. I looking back, I was probably awful for my wife and my kids, but I didn't realise at the time. I was angry and just things like that, and because it wasn't happening at football, I wasn't getting on with the manager. But apart from that little block, after, you know, before that and after that, I've had good times. I've had good managers. Like I say, I've enjoyed it. No matter where I've been, if it's been up or down, I've enjoyed it because it's been an experience. And like I said, I've played for some really good managers. I've learned a lot. A lot of it in good terms. Like I say, there's not much bad, but I played some great players. And I think it's just, like you say, your career is never like that, is it? It's in any walk of life, you always get the ups and downs. But I think in the downs, you learn more, but just thinking, well, I could have done that better. I mean, I look back at games I've played in now and think, was that me playing? And you just, things you're doing, but because you get better as you get, I think you learn more as you get older and you would do different things, but learn different positions, like I say, and ways of playing. I've learned a lot in that sense. Like I said, because back in the day, I was just covering the touchdown winger. Now I can see different things on coaching side. And but I've like I said, I've been very, very lucky. I've played for some great clubs and had some good times, and took some good memories with me.
Nice. And kind of going on to that as well, I mean, it's great to hear that you're sort of getting involved in coaching. Now, how are you finding that? And how's that sort of, I mean, obviously you're still playing, but how's that sort of adaptation been in terms of, like you said, being a player and then kind of going into coaching view?
It's an eye opener. I mean, I did a course last week, and when when you're football, you just turn up and the training's laid out. I think players will tell you, and you just think, yeah, we're doing that, and you're literally just in a zone. And then I look like all the planning that goes into it, the time, and I just think the coaches come out and just chuck a few corners down. We're doing it. It's like they've probably worked on that for an hour, and it's crazy what you think. I said to the lads, like, if you're going to do it, you've got to really go into it, because you can't go in it half-hearted, and you've got to put the work in, because people will find you out, and players will look and think, well, he's sloppy at this and this and this. But like I said, I've learned a lot in that terms. Even last night, I mean, I'm on the bench at the game at Preston last night, and normally I just watch the game as where am I going to come on. I'm watching it like the patterns as they're going on and stuff, and movements of what I've been trying to learn, and it's crazy, honestly. I'm not even looking at the ball. I'm looking at like the off players running off the ball and stuff. It's mad. I don't know if you asked any players on your pod about the ex-players who are now coaching. I don't know if they tell you any different, but it is an eye opener. But it's really good. I mean, you learn every day because there's always something new. Like you said, different systems, different ways of playing. Managers have different, like you said, philosophies, and you've got to adapt in every game, not just your way of just one way.
Yeah.
And our manager's good at that. Like you say, he loves football. He's trying to adapt the team and trying to get a way of playing. And we're always, chopping and changing against different personnel. So you learn a lot, really. Even though I'm playing, I'm learning as I'm still playing. I'm still learning, like you say, on the other side of the coaching. So it's enjoyable. I mean, it's not for everyone. People just probably want to get out of football when they've done they've had enough. But I quite like attachment and learning stuff every day. So I'm enjoying it.
Nice. I think it's interesting as well, because like you said about, obviously you've got the added benefit of being a player yourself. And I think that, there's sometimes in the coaching mode, there is a bit of a debate about, some coaches, they go through 20, 30, 40 years of learning a trade almost, and they can't get a break and things like that. However, I think it boils down to understanding what you're doing coaching for. I mean, a lot of the time as well, I kind of say to coaches, well, you're not necessarily getting involved in coaching to become the Mourinhos, become the Alex Fergusons, become the Klopps. You're doing it ultimately to develop players, and you can do that at any level you're within almost. But I think having the added benefit of you being a player, like you said, you've seen these scenarios, you've been in different environments under different managers, different sets of players, different scenarios. So like you said, finals, different leagues, and I think that's so important that you're able to bring that to obviously the coaching element as well, because you have the knowledge from it. But I agree with you. So it's interesting. Sometimes I get so annoyed watching games because I can't actually just enjoy a game, because I'm watching it thinking, why has that player done that? Why's that? And then all of a sudden, by the time you finish thinking about that, something else has happened and you've missed a goal. It's crazy, but it's so good because, like you said, you get to analyze so many different things which are going on within a game of football, and it's an interesting industry, I think.
But even on the other hand, I've had mates say to me, like, why are you doing that? You've played the game for 20 years. Like, why do you need that? Like, coaching, like, you could do all your badges. You could be sacked in 5 months. You go graze a badger. You got all the stress, And I'm like, well, that's just life, isn't it? Like, as a player, I could have been released. I could have been sold. It's just the same. It's any job you could get sacked. Because they're saying to me, like, you're crazy. Like, don't you just want to, like, go and, like, live with your kid or, like, go on holiday? And I was like, yeah, but how long does that last? It wears off. And I said, no, it's the buzz, in it. If I get sacked, I get sacked. It's, that's just life, isn't it? Like, all the top managers get sacked. It's, like you said, believing in the way you like to play and trying to improve people. And if you can improve people and make them better, and if that's as players and people as well, and then that's half a buzz for me. I mean, if you see a young lad from a youth team who you've coached and helped, and you see him getting better, and he's gone on to an amazing move somewhere, like, I think that's half a satisfaction for a coach, thinking, well, I played a little bit of a part in his path, and that's what you should look at, really, the big picture, not all the negative of, well, you're getting sacked and etc. like that, and but that's how I try to look at it anyway.
No, I agree. And I think as well, even like we mentioned earlier on when I was speaking to Craig a couple of weeks ago, I mean, he's more than happy in that sort of development stage of players' careers and, helping them progress onto the first team. And I think sometimes some players will go to their coaching badges and think, right, I want the top jobs right away. And again, there's no disrespect in that, because I mean, sometimes it might work. And listen, let's all be honest, if we get an opportunity, we're going to try and take it no matter where it's at. But I think the interesting thing about coaching is that there's so many different positions or different roles, should I say, and responsibilities that you can have. I mean, you even look at somebody like Peter Cech, who's gone into a technical advisor role. You can still use elements of the knowledge from the game within that sort of position as well. So what would kind of be the aspiration for you? Would you want to potentially one day be a manager, or would you be happy sort of coaching these sort of development sides and academy sides?
I think at the minute, obviously, I think you can learn with the youth. I think, like, as I say, making mistakes and I think because if you get chucked straight into a job, and like you say, you learn on the job, and it doesn't go well for you, then that could scar you a little bit. I think you should learn and get you. But obviously, it's never that perfect. I mean, I look at the two lads, Gerrard and Lampard. I look at them, and like I say, Frank's got chucked in at Derby, and he's not going to turn it down. Like you said, he's going to take it. I would the same, and he's learning basically on the job day to day, and he's done a tremendous job, to be fair to him. And then he's probably, you're thinking next level, and then he's got chucked straight into Chelsea. Pressure's on, Champions League, winning the league. He's spent a few quid, and he's probably still learning, like you say, on the job of players, ways of playing. But then again, he's done a great job again, and he's probably not planned that path. He's probably thinking Chelsea in 10 years or something, I don't know, and then in England in 15 or something. But it's how do you turn it down? And sometimes people can, go in and do what he's done and done well, and getting good people around you, I think, is a plus, and getting I think that can help, because, like you say, you can pick one or two bad clubs and you're out the door, and then you might not be seen again. And Stephen, obviously, he's the same. He's gone to Rangers and he's done a good job. I personally think they'll win the league this year. I hope they do. And then where does he go? It's the time, isn't it? Does Klopp go and he goes in? Does Klopp maybe stay? He goes somewhere else? And it's all, people take different paths. But I think ideally you'd like to start with the youths, get through, and then get your job in, I don't know, low leagues, and then work your way up. But it's like you said, if someone offers you the job tomorrow, for instance, I don't know, if it's Middlesbrough and they come to me and say, you want the job, I'm going to say, no, you're going to take it on you. There's no ballpoint where you start. It's just how you adapt on the job, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, the good thing is that the game's so open, so wide now that, I mean, like look at Harry Kewell, for example. He's with Oldham, and that's no disrespect to Oldham, but a lot of people go, why are you starting down that low in inverted commas? But it's not that low. It's high leagues, within English football, and it's just because people associate certain names, even yourself, associate you with playing in the top leagues. And if you then took a manager's job at a League Two or a League One club, like you even said, even a non-league team, why are you taking a job there? Like you said, it's because you've been given an opportunity, and it's everything is a learning opportunity as well. So,
and sometimes I think you learn more at the low levels. I've spoken to lads who are down there, and they say even stuff, budgets are low. How do you, work a squad? Whereas sometimes getting flung loads of millions of pounds at you could, wow, what am I doing with this? It's on the other end of the scale. It's still pressure, but I think sometimes learning on tight budgets, you've only got a small squad, players, how you manage them in 3 games a week, and you've only got a squad of 16, 17, whatever it is. Whereas if you've got a squad of 30, that's a different pressure. Then you've got world-class players knocking on your door going, why not playing? And total different pressures, but different. And but sometimes I think that the lads do prefer to work their way up, and then when they are given that money in the top league, they know how to handle it, and what they did when they didn't have money, and they deal with it better. So, because you do see managers, don't you, who are really good on a budget, and then they all of a sudden get a job, and they might get 100 million, and they blow it, and then they don't do very well, and they're out of the job, and each to their own. But I think I generally feel like it is a good level, like you said. You shouldn't disrespect League One, League Two, or whatever it is, conference, because they're good jobs, they're really good jobs.
Yeah, and they're full-time jobs now. I mean, before the conference, you would probably get a part-time job where, like you said, you'd be training 2 or 3 times a week. But now, there's a lot of, even if you look at League Two, even saying that, actually League One as well, there's a lot of teams in those 2 leagues now where they were in the conference or the National League, but now, because of the sort of project that's going on there, they're building and they're going up the leagues, and there's no stopping them really, because there's so much thinking going behind it.
Yeah. No, I agree. No, I totally agree. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So listen, been some fantastic advice, some fantastic experiences and knowledge shared on this so far. What would you kind of to sort of like wrap it up, what would you kind of say you would like reflect back on advice you'd give to a younger Stewart Downing, or sort of the future player that's coming through into the game?
I don't want to sound cliche, but you've certainly got to make the most of everything you get, and all the coaching, all the the time. Just take everything in. I mean, because I'm trying to ram everything in my brain now at the minute, coming towards the end of my career. I think I wish I'd have did more when I was younger, because you're just playing, you don't worry about stuff like that. But looking back, even my badges, I wish I'd done them earlier and learnt more. I think that's a big thing. Try and improve every day, try and get better. And the big thing is, enjoy it, because it goes. And I know people always say it goes quick, and I used to think, he's just an old man just moaning. But I've seen it in the lockdown. I was agreed to go back to Blackburn, and then it got pulled away from me at one point. And then I'm sat at home, twiddling my thumbs, and my kids at school, my wife's out, and then you think, wow, this is real. This is what I'm doing. I was on coaching stuff, and it was hard, because I didn't retire on my terms, if you know what I mean. I got basically retired because of COVID and stuff like that, and budget and finance, and it was difficult. So I definitely say to a player, make the most of it and get the best out of your career as you can, and because it does go very, very quick, and can be taken away from you when you're not really expecting it. So I don't want to make that a negative, but I'm trying to make it, make the most of it, because you just never know when it goes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a fantastic message, because it's not
enjoy it, because I look back and sometimes I didn't probably enjoy it as much as I can, and maybe because you can't, because you're in the bubble and it's next game. And like you say, at that time when I said in Middlesbrough, I was a bit miserable and a bit moody around the house, and I'm thinking, well, how was I like that? What was I doing? Like, you're affecting your family, everyone around you, and I didn't enjoy it. So I should have just went, this is what it is, deal with it. If I have to move in the next year, I'll move in the next year. But at this point, I'm going to have to get my head down. But it affected me a little bit, and that was one thing I shouldn't let it affect me as much as it did. And I should have enjoyed it, because I was playing for my hometown club, and I wasn't very happy, which is not really, really that doesn't really happen. But it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as well, like you said earlier on as well, about having good people around you. I think that's so important as well, because, you want good people within the club around you, and obviously externally as well, because, like you said, what happens, a lot of people see obviously things happen on the field, and, like we said before, you get a certain, judgment of an individual based on what we see, but away from the field, what do they do? I mean, I've heard stories before about players where, they've been playing brilliant football in their first team. They then come home and they're in a mansion, and they live in one room of their mansion, because they've got nothing else to do, and playing football is all they know almost. So I agree. I think living for that moment of where you are, and like we said about the no disrespect to League Two and League One clubs. I mean, wherever you are, I mean, obviously everyone always wants to do better, and think what's next, but getting into League Two clubs, getting into League One clubs is a great standard of football, and it's let me just enjoy my football, let me excel within what I'm doing, and we've seen some good stories of people that have done that, and now playing in the top leagues as well. So
no, I agree, definitely, certainly.
Yeah, but no, fantastic message, Stuart. Like I said, it's a real pleasure to have you on here. Like I said,
enjoyed it.
Not to big you up too much, but you are a real legend of the game, and I think it's important to get you on here to share those experiences and knowledge as well. And it's great to hear that you're going into coaching as well, because like I said to you before, I think someone like you to have that knowledge and then take that into a coaching environment as well, it's only going to benefit the young players coming through. So it's fantastic.
I appreciate it. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.